So today we are talking about Dan Schneider. Yeah, the feet-loving, weird around the child screenwriter, producer, and actor on Nickelodeon. So this new documentary is coming out called Quiet on Set that is going to be talking about Dan Schneider and Nickelodeon and the whole workplace. Now, some allegations for Dan Schneider had been going around for a long time. People talking about how obsessed he is about feet, how all these weird acts have went on Nickelodeon and all these shows. I'm pretty sure you remember if you grew up watching those shows, whether that was Victorious, iCarly, but some really weird stuff has went on that set and even on stuff that aired. But today we are going to be talking about how Dan Schneider actually came out with an interview talking about his apology and addressing everything that has been said about him. So this interview was on Dan Rap, which is Dan Schneider's YouTube channel, and this interview was actually hosted by Boogie, which played Tebow in iCarly. So in this interview, when one of the actors interviews him, they talk about a few things that were talked about in the documentary.
Hey, it's Boogie. I played Tebow on Nickelodeon's iCarly. I got a chance to watch the Quiet on Set program, and I reached out to Dan to see if it was something that he'd be willing to discuss. I'm pleased to say that he said yes. I'm really glad you're here because I believe this is important.
For sure.
We've got a lot of things to unpack.
Talking about the writer's room, people's experiences on the set, the inappropriate jokes that were made on the shows, and the whole environment. Now, I have a real big problem with this interview because it doesn't fully talk about everything. For instance, he talks about how he may have made inappropriate jokes in the writing room.
Dan, talk to me about the writer's room. From what I saw, not cool.
No, and I don't mean to cut you off, but if I can cut right to the chase, let me just say, no writer should ever feel uncomfortable in any writer's room. Most TV writers, comedy writers have been in writers' rooms, and they are aware that a lot of times there are inappropriate jokes made and inappropriate topics come up. But the fact that I participated in that, especially when I was leading the room, it embarrasses me. I shouldn't have done it.
May have wrongly snapped at people.
Definitely at times didn't give people the best of me. I didn't show enough patience. I could be cocky and definitely overambitious, and sometimes just straight up rude and obnoxious, and I am so sorry. When I watched the show, I could see the hurt in some people's eyes, and it made me feel awful.
If there was any inappropriate jokes, it was because the kids at the time liked those jokes.
All these jokes that you're speaking of, that the show covered over the past 2 nights, every one of those jokes was written for a kid audience because kids thought they were funny and only funny.
And if they're that bad, then he approves that they cut them out now.
If that's how anyone feels, let's cut those jokes out of the show.
And he says that some people think that he could just write something and no matter what, it could be published or put into these shows. But he says multiple people, even his bosses, would look over this stuff and approve it.
Really. Okay. And I'm talking about wardrobe. I'm talking about makeup, sound, sets, dialogue, jokes, everything.
Now, when you say approval, these obviously that's a hierarchy, not your colleagues or people in the room. Okay.
No, not my colleagues. No, these are my bosses. Bosses, and then their bosses, and then their bosses. And they're approving all of this stuff.
Okay.
And at the end of this, he even says, he's asked by the interviewer if he would do anything differently. And he says there should be a licensed therapist on set to talk to these kids about what they're getting into in this acting world and social media.
Yeah, there's definitely things that I would do differently. One that I think would be really, really important is when you're hiring young actors, minors, to work in television, I would suggest that we have a licensed therapist there to oversee that process for the specific reason of making sure that those kids really wanted to do this job, that they really wanted to be on television. Maybe they should even be informed about what that means. What's it gonna mean if you're famous? What's that gonna mean on social media?
And he would treat people better.
The main thing that I would change is how I treat people and everyone. I definitely at times didn't give people the best of me. I didn't show enough patience. I could be cocky and definitely overambitious, and sometimes just straight up rude and obnoxious, and I am so sorry that I ever was.
Now, my problem with this interview is, why is he not addressing, why isn't he deeply addressing the stuff that's being said? Now, I haven't watched the documentary, but there has been allegations going on for a long time about him making people uncomfortable on set.
Can say is, what can't you say? I mean, honest to God, I could go on and on about all the wonderful qualities about Miranda, but I know time permits, and I will consolidate.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, oh man, here we go. All right.
Don't do that.
Okay.
That'd be bad.
Better things I've ever heard.
Hey,
Hi, what's going on here? Sitting on the floor of the set.
because we are.
Even in this interview, the interviewer that was one of the actors on set said that he felt like everyone had trust in Dan Schneider.
Well, something that really kind of bothered me was how they depicted your relationship with the cast.
Yeah, it bothered me too.
Yeah, just me being there, I knew the dynamic was trust. I understood that in situations where they may have had turmoil, whether it be with their families, whether it be other castmates, they came to you. Versus how they made you look.
Which from videos and pictures didn't seem right. It seemed like anytime Dan Schneider would walk up, all the actors would get uncomfortable. None of those allegations were addressed. Only him saying that he should have treated people differently, and if there was anything inappropriate, it was just kids' entertainment, and he hates how people may have felt that it was not a safe work environment. I think more needs to be said on this, because there's a lot of things that he did not address. Like, you can't just brush off the biggest things that happened and just act like they never happened and just say, oh, well, I'm going to talk about this, but I'm not going to talk about this. I'm just going to play it down. Which seems like this is what this interview is. Just him downplaying everything and acting as if he's just an innocent guy. You tell me what you think in the comments. I appreciate you watching the video. Like, subscribe. But tell me what you think. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thanks. I couldn't find any copyright-free music, so I'm just gonna beatbox. Yeah, it kind of sucks. Subscribe, please. Watch my videos. Thanks.